So let's go to Canada. Harvey, no pronouns, is a theist and wants to know why we are so convinced that there isn't a God. Hey, Harvey, you're talking with SR and Seth. Is that kind of the gist of what you're asking?
Yeah, actually, first of all, I just want to say I really enjoy your show. I've been listening to it for years, not real consistently, but I've, every now and then I'll search you up on YouTube or whatever. But that was my main question: is why are you so convinced there's not a God or any concept of God? But as I've been listening to your show tonight, I actually have a lot more questions. Although I'm not sure we'll have time to get to all of them.
Yeah, probably won't. We'll try to tackle this one as best we can, though. Seth, why are you so convinced that there isn't a God? If
which God do you think I would be is most convincing? Like, you obviously want to lean me in a certain direction. Which God are you talking about?
Well, it's a good question. I mean, to be honest, I call myself a theist, but I don't even know if you could call me that. Maybe I'm more of an agnostic or an agnostic theist, or even a deist in some sense. Because I tend to agree with you guys. When you say or when you look at God as this being of almost like a hierarchy, where he's the judge and commander and the ruler of all things. That people get this idea that it's almost like this old man in the clouds. I don't really picture God like that. I mean, I'm not entirely convinced what God is. I don't think any of us can truly know what God is until we experience it. But
you and I have so much in common.
Yeah,
Harvey.
right.
You and I have so much in common, right? I'm not convinced. I haven't really seen anything. If you find something out that's testable, call me and we'll talk. You and I have that in common. And until somebody makes a demonstrable proof of a God, well, then you and I are kind of in the same boat. There's no good reason to believe it. Therefore, we are non-believers in gods. I think you might be an atheist. I don't know. I'm not going to stick on a label.
Maybe I am.
Yeah, I mean, come on.
You said it, Harvey. You said, hey, look, people talk about this thing and nobody really kind of knows what it is, and we don't really have good explanation and stuff. And it's like, yeah, just stop right there, brother. Like, I'm right with you. If we looked at anything else in existence from that perspective, it'd be like, yeah, I'm not convinced by that. And it's like, well, why? It's like, well, we've got no reason to. You just said nobody really seems to know what the descriptions are for it. Even if we can't even define it accurately, how can we then take the next step to say we believe it, we accept that it exists? And even more so, how do we then from there say, here's the things that it actually wants us to do? So
no, absolutely. I think, to be honest, I think I agree with you guys more than I disagree with you guys. But where I was going with that was, one concept of God that I kind of have taken liking to, and that seems more reasonable to me, is, I don't know if you guys have ever listened to Alan Watts.
I've heard the name.
No,
he wrote a series. He wrote a series of books. Anyways, he talks about God. He advocates for something known as atheism in the name of God. It's a very interesting concept, where he talks about, whatever you want to call God is just this eternal force that drives the universe, or that works through all things in the universe.
Okay. So a kind of Spinoza-y type God, kind of that type of thing, like the universe itself. Is that kind of what you're saying? Because I have problems with that kind of understanding.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I don't know if I'm even convinced on that enough to say no. It's just the universe itself. I like the idea of not putting an image on God.
Yeah, I understand why that feels so comfortable. I understand why. And when I was a believer, I didn't have a picture of, some big burly bearded dude or anything sitting on clouds. That wasn't where I came to it, right? But the issue for me when we have these long, conversations, and we're saying, oh my gosh, look at all these other things about God and look at all these other conclusions that we need to draw from this thing. But at the end of the day, what we're doing is we're just like equivocating between God and the concept of love and the experience of love that we have. I think the reason that I'm unconvinced is because you haven't actually defined or clarified anything novel. You've just literally told me this water bottle is the same thing as this coaster. And I just know that that's not true. I know that that's not true demonstrably, right? And so like you cannot tell me that God just is love, because then what you're saying is like 2 weeks ago when my neighbor got a bunny rabbit and I pet the bunny rabbit for the first time, I was like, "Oh my gosh, I love you. You're so fluffy." Like I could have said, "Oh my God, I got you." And that doesn't make any sense. We know that those two concepts are different. And that's why we have different terminologies for them. So if that's all we're doing at the end of the day with our conception of God, then again, I just say that that fails, right? It's at least
Mhm.
a little bit better than the outright contradictory version of God, where it's like, if two or more believers ask anything in my name, it will happen. Because that's real easy. We just get two Christians together. We're just like, pray for anything. And then when it inevitably fails, it's, well, there you go. So, but yeah, we'll let you have a last thought, Harvey. I want to try to grab one or two more of these calls if possible. So
Yeah, it's too bad because I feel we were making progress. Yeah, I never really
yeah.
said that. I never really maybe I didn't really mean. I don't even think I actually even said that God was love. I think the concept of God that I was portraying is just almost like a Buddhist perspective, like just having no concept of it at all. Just God is whatever God is. It is what it is. It is what it is. I wouldn't use the term He because God wouldn't have.
Yeah. That's a tautology that is again, I think kind of like what Seth said earlier with a different caller, where it's kind of a dodge of what the actual conversation is. We're not really delving into what this God is. And so therefore, again, we haven't moved the needle in terms of justification for accepting the claims.
It almost falls into, what people are looking for language to talk about the transcendent beauty of the universe. And we often lack descriptors to talk about the things that move us in the most meaningful ways, whether it's our grasp of the cosmos or a beautiful sunset or the birth of a child or whatever. And so that we might say that, this moved me in a spiritual way. And I sense that you might be using God language like that, a way to describe maybe the unknown, the mysterious, the transcendent, the things larger than us, the great unknown. I'm not totally convinced that's the language that's best to use, but it sounds like you're on a journey. It sounds like you're being pretty honest with yourself about what you do and don't believe. And in the same vein, I say keep asking questions, stay curious. And if you find something out for sure, something concrete, have your people call our people. Okay.
That's right, Harvey.
Absolutely. If I can, just for one last second, I just want to go. Can I just go back to my original question quickly and just expand on it?
You got 15 seconds, Harvey.
Yeah. So, okay, perfect. So I asked why are you so convinced there's not a God, and we kind of pointed out, well, maybe in some way, in a lot of what I'm thinking, maybe I am an atheist, but I would never be an atheist to the same extent that you're an atheist, because you guys are convinced there's not a God, where I'm just like, any concept of God is possible. I don't tend to agree with the concepts that are commonly presented.
Sure. Just as clarifying here, Harvey, I don't say that all conceptions of God are not true, right? I don't take that stance. I take the stance that every conception I have ever come across fails in some way. I am absolutely still leaving open the possibility for the black swan. I have not ruled out black swans as being possible, right? All I've simply said is currently all of the swans we've seen are white, 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 and white. And so most likely any other swan that we come across is going to follow that pattern. And that's just the same with the concepts of God. So yeah, sure, there could be a concept of God out there that I just haven't come across that is 100% logically valid, and sound.
But I
But
think the point is to not
I
have a
haven't seen it.
concept of God, to not have a concept of God. Like,
Yeah,
have you
but
guys
that's
ever read the book
but then you have to, but then you kind of have to go back to your question of why aren't you convinced? And it's like, well, because I literally don't have a concept. But Harvey, thank you so much, man. I do think this was a good call, and we were making progress. Give us a call back in the future, definitely, because I think we could make even more progress. So thanks so much. Thanks so much for giving us a call, Harvey.
Relating to specific gods, if God made Adam in his image, and Adam had a foreskin, does that mean Yahweh had a foreskin? Like,
this is I'm so glad you said that, and one of the reasons is because I get to mention Dr. Francesca Stavrakopoulou's book God and Anatomy, because I think it is so, I had never heard of this concept that we do actually have ancient rabbis like writing down them arguing about whether or not God had a foreskin. This is a real thing. People used to do this. They used to ask each other that, and that just blows my mind, Seth, to think about that 1,000, 2,000 years ago, that's what people were doing. Like,
this is the stuff that occupies my mind.